Get ready.
Hello, I am Liam Ashcroft and welcome to another episode of This is Saturn. Many things have happened since the last episode, and by that, I mean I got this! It's possibly the greatest thing I own. Anyway, that's not all that calls for celebration, as 1 year ago this month, in fact no, 1 year ago this day, I started something very special. And that was This is Saturn. Yes, not counting the recycled Daytona USA episode, this episode marks 1 year of This is Saturn. I couldn't have got here without the support of you lot, and from the bottom of my heart I thank you all for watching the series. Here's to another year of SEGA Saturn goodness. Today we'll be ringing in the celebrations with SEGA Touring Car? What? I thought this game was crap! Well, let's give a history lesson. Anyone who's been watching this show for a bit has probably gathered by now that I love Sega's arcade games, in particular AM2's work. I also love me some racing games, and so another Sega arcade racer being reviewed on this show, surely only good things can come from this, right? AM3, or more AM3 after being split into AM Annex, put out Sega Touring Car in arcades in 1996. Apparently intended as a game that was more of a simulation than the arcadey fun of Daytona or Sega Rally. Upon its release, the game was absolutely thrashed in reviews. Many criticised the control as insanely slippery, and basically went with, the game is too damn fast. Despite this, the game ran on a Sega Model 2 board, and so a Sega Saturn port was inevitable, and lo and behold in 1997 that's exactly what we got. Now I'd be glad just to dismiss this game here and there after those glowing reviews, but then that wouldn't be fair. After all, look at Gale Racer. Everyone hated that game upon release, but when I reviewed it last year, I loved it. So who knows, perhaps it's another case of a hidden gem. So, for those unaware of why the name's Sega Touring Car, like I was at first, the name comes from the Dutch Tourenwagen Meisterschaft 95 series, or German Touring Car Championship 95 series, to those who can't speak German, like me. It's a racing series that's a lot slower than the likes of Formula 1, but still makes for entertaining viewing. Apparently, anyway. So yeah, this racing series is the focus of our shiny Sega arcade game, so moving on, let's boot up the Saturn and look at what we're dealing with here. Upon booting the game up, you're greeted with the choice of an arcade side or a Saturn side. This is very similar to Daytona USA's two different modes, arcade and Saturn mode. Arcade mode is literally the arcade game downscaled with no bells or whistles, and the Saturn side contains several other modes in itself. Let's go through them all, shall we? Both arcade and Saturn mode have the Championship mode. Race across 3 courses a la Sega Rally and place first, simple as. You get a choice of 4 cars initially, all licensed and all with varying stats and play styles. The rest of the modes are all exclusive to Saturn mode, and almost all of them have to be unlocked. Time Attack is unlocked from the start and is self-explanatory, but unlockable are Exhibition mode, in which you race on a secret track, Boomtown circuit, and Versus Race, which is unlocked from the start for 2-player but has support for custom AI duels, which must be unlocked. That aside, we've got an options menu for stuff like car customization from a la Sega Rally, a general options menu for stuff like difficulty, and a records menu. That said, there's also a few extras tucked away in here. By using secret codes, you can unlock special net events in Saturn mode that offer cool little objectives and such. These include a Christmas-themed race, an event in which you have to knock down cones across the track, and one hilarious event in which you have to race through oncoming traffic, which reminds me considerably of one of the missions in Chase HQ 2. But I digress. These are a fun distraction anyway. Worthy of note is that Sega Touring Car's Japanese version comes with a ton of inserts about these net events. I honestly have no idea what they're talking about, but they seem to refer to the winter event. Also worthy of note is that the championship mode has a secret 4th stage, the urban circuit. Beating this unlocks the true ending of the game, and it was a nice surprise when I first got it. And so it's time to talk about the gameplay. How does it actually play? Is it really that bad? Yes. Yes, it is. Okay, that's a bit harsh. Touring Car's main issues lie in the control department. For real this time, a Gale Racer situation, this isn't. The game's nigh unplayable with a D-pad, and this goes double if you're using automatic transmission. The steering wheel is slightly better, but still not ideal. The physics are simply too slippery, and the cars just move way too fast. Thankfully though, once again, the glorious Saturn 3D pad comes in to help us out. Slightly. If you're using automatic transmission, then you're still not going to have a great time, but the 3D pad in tandem with manual transmission does help the controls quite a bit. That said, ultimately you never feel as in control as in a game like Daytona USA, and in the third course of arcade mode, I swear even the AI has difficulty cutting corners, and as for me, I go slamming into those titular brick walls like it's my job. You can adjust to it, and I sort of did eventually, hence why I unlocked everything, but it's still not exactly a great experience. Controls aside, the rest of the game's okay. The track design is solid, if a bit hard to navigate due to the physics, and I suppose it does work well as a simulatory sort of game. It's just not a very fun simulation most of the time. The frame rate also doesn't help things, as it's constantly chugging along with incredibly frequent jitters and such. At the very least, unlike games like Daytona and Sonic R, the draw distance is pretty damn solid, which makes things slightly more manageable when it comes to navigating the tracks. But on the whole, Touring Car is pretty weak from a gameplay standpoint. Anywho, in the game, you're given the aforementioned choice of 4 cars, which does at least provide some variety to the racing. Of note is that there are actually a few unlockable cars. Beating the exhibition race unlocks the SEGA Racing Proto, a souped up sports car. This car looks awesome, and I've actually found it helps with the playability, as it's got the best stats in the game. Why one of the most playable aspects of this game is unlockable is beyond me, and it reminds me of Sonic and the Secret Rings, where you basically had to buy better controls. But anywho, it's also well documented that using cheat codes unlocks the Lancia and Celsior cars from Sega Rally. But there's a ton of different codes across tons of different sites, and I have no idea which ones are right because none of them have worked for me. To my knowledge, there's no way to get them without some kind of code, so I'm drawing a blank on this one, to be honest. They're definitely in there. I've had multiple people tell me they've unlocked them, but nope, not a clue. The cars do make a difference to how you play, which is good to see. It's not just 4 cars all with all the same playstyles. I personally lean towards the Toyota and the Mercedes myself. Graphically, I've already mentioned the pretty poor frame rate, but rather impressive draw distance. And other than that, it looks alright. By now I probably should have gotten an RGB SCART cable to help in judging graphics, but from what I've played, it's mostly good. And that brings us to the soundtrack, which is either insanely good or insanely bad depending on your tastes. As for me, yeah, I friggin' love it. You actually get a choice of music in the game, tracks from Avex tracks, basically licensed Eurobeat music, Sega's in-house stuff, or generic trance material. The only music I listen to when playing is the default Avex track stuff though. It's delightfully cheesy, but hot damn is it catchy. So High is my personal favourite. Also worth noting is there's an ace remix of Conditioned Reflex from Sega Rally somewhere in here. Perhaps it's tied to those Sega Rally cars I can't unlock, but either way, it's awesome. Multiplayer races work decently. They carry over all of the main game's issues, but they're not really worse off compared to the main game, a la Sonic R. That's not to say my brother had fun in multiplayer, he immediately heralded the game as awful, but as far as multiplayer goes, you could do worse. Overall, SEGA Touring Car is a very polarising game. It's certainly not the worst game I've played, but it's really not a shining example of racing on the Saturn either. Daytona USA Saturn port isn't gleaming, but I'd still probably play it over this. If you're willing to get a 3D pad and perhaps spend some time getting accustomed to the considerably wonky controls, there's some enjoyment. And it's not to say that everything about the game is so wonky. Again, I love the music and the graphics aren't too bad. But overall, it's just shy of enough enjoyment for me to really recommend it over other Saturn racing games. Thanks for watching this episode of This is Saturn, and once again thank you for supporting this show for over 1 year. Join me next time where we'll be covering something that is long overdue, a peripheral that I never shut up about, the SEGA 3D pad. See you then.